Hello everyone and welcome back to another modelled writing video. So if you've been with us before, then you know the structure of these videos. If you're new here, welcome, and today we are going to discuss two task 2 questions and we will talk through our plan and we'll do the write-up as if we were in the IELTS exam. So this is brilliant practice for you if you've booked your IELTS exam, if you don't know how to approach task 2, if you're struggling with certain types of questions, then this is the place to be for that. We'll go through everything today and of course some tips to get those top band scores as well. Okay then, well, let's get started with our first topic of the day. And we're going to talk about housing. So this can come up in task 2 and we'll look at how we approach this question. So the question, some people think that it is better to live in a house than in an apartment. What are the advantages and disadvantages of living in a house compared to living in an apartment? Okay then, so we have an advantages and disadvantages section. Question. So we're going to have one paragraph for the advantages and one for the disadvantages. So we'll follow a 4-paragraph structure for this question. Okay then, so what are we being asked? Let's think about this a bit more. What are the advantages and disadvantages of living in a house compared to living in an apartment? Right. Notice that this question does not ask us for our opinion. So this isn't an opinion question. We are just laying out pros and cons, if you like, of this one. Okay, let's think about this a bit more with the plan. So a plan is essential to stay on track. It helps us not waver from the question and it really sets us apart and gives us an advantage in the exam. So really good idea to spend about 10 minutes thinking of your generating your thoughts and putting them down on paper. You get 40 minutes for this question, this task. So you can spend a reasonable amount on the plan. Not too much, of course, but 5-10 minutes, that's okay. Okay, so paragraph 1 then, we are going to think of the advantages. And these are your notes, so you're welcome to not full sentences here, that's okay. So advantages of living in a house compared to living in an apartment. Well, the first thing that springs to mind is, oh wow, the rooms. So we have plenty of rooms, maybe more than in an apartment for most of the time. Space, perhaps you have a garden. So we'll talk about the actual place itself. Then maybe we can go into the fact that the money side, that maybe it's a good investment and that housing prices are going up and up. So in years to come, you might see the benefits of living in a house compared to living in an apartment. Not talking about buying though, so we have to be a bit careful about that. But we can mention it and link it to the question. So always just making sure that we're answering the question here. That's a big part of what you're being assessed upon. Disadvantages of living in a house. Well, apartments tend to be a bit more modern, so maybe a house might be less modern. It might be expensive to maintain. The fact that there is actually a housing crisis in some parts of the world. There's not enough places to live. So this might feed into the fact that you might not find your dream house, or you might be forced into buying or living in a house that perhaps you don't really want. You might have to make sacrifices. It might be difficult to redesign as well. Difficult to redesign. Okay, so Oh, that is not how we spell that. Let's redo that. There we go. This is just our notes, but of course, in the exam itself, we are going to pay special attention to spelling. That's another point to be aware of, grammar and spelling. Okay, so let's have a think. In our conclusion, well, we don't have an opinion, so we're simply going to restate maybe one advantage and one disadvantage that we were talking about in the essay. Okay, so we've had a think, we've noted down our ideas. I think that's a good start. And now we can go to the write-up itself. Okay, so you might be thinking, well, where do we even begin with this task 2? It's quite a big undertaking. You're right, it can be, but we'll follow this structure and you'll see that actually once we break it down, it's not too overcomplicated because we want to keep it as simple as possible for you in the exam. So we'll start how we start every task 2 and in fact every task 1 with paraphrasing. So we need to put this sentence here into our own words. Some people think that it is better to live in a house than in an apartment. We could say something like, it is argued that it is maybe more beneficial to live in it's difficult to paraphrase house because we don't want to lose the meaning. So I'm going to keep that word in, and that's okay. You don't need to paraphrase every single part of the statement, the sentence, because it won't be accurate. So we have to play this balancing act between keeping the meaning, but also showing that off our skills that we can paraphrase. It is argued that it is more beneficial to live in a house compared with an apartment. Okay, so what are the advantages and disadvantages? Well, that's what we're going to say now, is that we're going to tell the reader, the examiner, what we're going to do in our essay. This essay will discuss we've used beneficial, I was going to say benefits, we don't want to say advantages, let's have a think. We could maybe change this word around to use benefits and drawbacks. It is preferred, maybe we could use one F there. It is argued that it is preferred to live in a house compared with an apartment. This essay will discuss the benefits and drawbacks of such a situation. It's quite short, but it's to the point, and really we want to focus on the main body of the essay anyway. So we've paraphrased, we've laid out what we're going to do in the essay. I think that's a strong start there. Okay, so let's dive into our first main body, which will be the advantages. Okay, so let's talk about the actual space itself. The primary reason, we can talk about the main reason, in which living in a house is more highly regarded, maybe, than living in an apartment, is the fact that more often than not, you have, we could say, a more space or more square meters of space, of living space. Okay, so we're starting off with our topic sentence. Let's read this back. The primary reason in which living in a house is more highly regarded than living in an apartment is the fact, we don't really need that comma there. Oh, is the fact that more often than not, I think that will be nice to have comma there. More often than not, comma, you have more square meters of living space. Okay, let's expand this then a little bit. This can lead to further advantages. For example, you may have more rooms and potentially even a garden. Okay, so we're developing this idea then. These living quarters, maybe. These living quarters can be therefore customized. So you can redecorate perhaps. There's more. We won't use contractions for this essay, so we'll use the full words there. There is more, and furthermore, there is more opportunity to expand. For example, in the loft, conservatory, or what have we got? The loft. You could go into the conservatory, or maybe you could create a garden or something like this. In the form of a maybe loft conversion, because houses are more likely to have roofs than apartments. For example, in the form of a loft conversion, an upstairs or another level, or the garden can be utilized for further construction. Okay, so we are utilized. We are, yes, expanding this idea on how you can, it's preferred because there's plenty of space and this can be transformed to your liking if you want to think of it that way. So customizable. So now we can move into the monetary side. Obviously the question says living in a house. It's not specific, but we can twist it so that we're still answering the question. If by living you are also paying for a mortgage and buying, then this will actually, we'll start this off with a good phrase, like an additional benefit. Actually, maybe we could put that on the end. If by living you are also paying for a mortgage and buying, then a further advantage would be the sound financial investment. Housing is increasing in price, meaning your property will more than likely Housing is increasing in price, meaning your property will more than likely also be more valuable over time, perhaps. Over time. Okay, and then maybe we can link it back to what we're talking about. These are the main advantages to living in a house. So we're just tying it back. These are the main advantages to living in a house rather than an apartment. Apartment. These, therefore, okay, let's have a read of this back and see how we're doing. The primary reason in which living in a house is more highly regarded than living in an apartment is the fact that, more often than not, you have more square meters of living space. This can lead to further advantages. For example, you may have more rooms and potentially even a garden. These living quarters can therefore be customized. We're just editing as we go along, checking spelling and grammar. And furthermore, there is maybe repetition there, opportunity to expand. For example, I think that would be nice as a separate sentence. For example, in the form of a loft conversion, another level or the garden can be utilised for further construction. If by living you are also paying for a mortgage and buying, then a further advantage would be the sound financial investment. Housing is increasing in price, meaning your property will be more valuable over time. These, therefore, are the main advantages to living in a house rather than an apartment. Okay, I think that's a strong advantages paragraph we have here. We've got specific language, we've got clear points and examples, topic sentence, and we're linking back to the question. Brilliant. Okay, so let's now go to the disadvantages. And for this paragraph, we'll have our notes, but let's refer back. We have less modern, expensive, there's a housing crisis, sacrifices, difficult to redesign. Okay, where to begin with the disadvantages? Let's talk about the designing and the modern aspect first. So let's start with a nice phrase like, on the other hand, it is clear, or there are also some major drawbacks to maybe situating oneself in a house. Oh, and we're checking our spelling. There we go. So we're setting up for this paragraph now. The primary disadvantage. The primary disadvantage is the fact that housing is less modern than apartments. On the whole. Okay, let's dive into some examples here. So how are they less modern? They were often built upwards of 50 years ago, meaning the electricals and plumbing might be, a good word is maybe precarious or outdated. We can use both outdated and precarious. the boiler, or yes, boilers seem to be an issue, or just anything we can pick on. The boiler might be a cause for concern. For instance. Okay, so let's link in this idea of redesigning actually being quite a problem, and this idea that it's less modern. This leads into, this turns the idea that a house is customizable is also customizable is also a drawback, as we can link it in with not being so modern, as these old-fashioned aspects make redesigning quite problematic. And then we can do a nice maybe semicolon. And then we could say something like, you don't know what you're going to find, or maybe not knowing what you are going to find. Okay, so we're linking in redesigning, and now let's tie in the expenses of it all, and this idea of a housing crisis. On the discussing the financial elements. A house demands money for repairs that may occur. We can talk about the housing crisis. On top of this, the current housing crisis means that buying and renting is more expensive in comparison with previous generations. This is a big consideration, perhaps, or let's have a think back. On top of this, the current housing crisis means that buying and renting, so we're covering all bases then, living, is more expensive in comparison with previous generations. This is an enormous consideration for prospective tenants or buyers or owners, maybe. The current housing and economic we can talk about. Okay, let's have a read of this back and see how we're doing. On the other hand, there are also some major drawbacks to situating oneself in a house. The primary disadvantage is the fact that housing is less modern than apartments on the whole. They were often built upwards of 50 years ago, meaning the electricals and plumbing might be outdated and precarious. The boiler might be a cause for concern, for instance. The idea that a house is customizable is also a drawback, as these old-fashioned aspects make redesigning quite problematic, not knowing what you are going to find. Discussing the financial elements, a house demands more money for repairs that may occur. On top of this, the current housing and economic crisis means that buying and renting is more expensive in comparison with previous generations. This is an enormous consideration for prospective tenants or owners. Okay then, so a few things that I might change here. I think this might be better put like this, such as the boiler. This could be changed. It might sound a bit smoother just to say highlighting the financial side. Highlighting the financial side, a house demands money for repairs that may occur. Repairs and maintenance that may occur. Okay, I think that's strong. I think that's a good second disadvantages paragraph there. So we've got our introduction, advantages, disadvantages. Now we can just move into the conclusion. We're not being asked for our opinion, so we're just going to say something like, in conclusion, there are a plethora of advantages, such as the investment of living in a house. However, there are disadvantages as well. For instance, the lack of modern features a house brings. Okay then, I'm off the page here, but that's all right. Let's have a look and see. I feel like this is quite a long one, but we are looking for 250 word minimum. So let's double check that now. Okay, so I'm down here, but that's all right. So this comes to 332 words, which is a bit over the 250 minimum. So maybe for you, if you're following along at home, you can think, okay, maybe I would have to omit a few points or remove a few points there, but to make it more realistic. But at least you can see the structure that we're following, and you know how we're approaching this with our topic sentence, our developed ideas, examples, and always linking back to the question there. As well as that, we're checking our spelling, we're using specialized vocabulary, topic-specific vocabulary, and we're structuring it with the advantages here and the disadvantages. So I hope that's helped for this question. Housing is it's not a very common topic, but it's good to be aware of it nevertheless. Okay, well, moving on now to a very popular topic, and definitely one that could come up in a variety of different types of ways. Technology. Okay, let's have a think about this one. More and more parents are allowing their children to play on computers and tablets as they think that children should learn technology skills. Do the advantages of this development outweigh the disadvantages? Ooh, okay, so instantly I'm thinking, right, this is a balance and this is an opinion question. Do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? Right. Let's think about this a bit more then. So more and more parents are allowing their children to play on computers and tablets as they think that children should learn technology skills. That's the crux of the statement here. There's advantages of this and there's disadvantages. It's our job to decide which one is more than the other. Okay, planning is so important for this one. Well, all of the questions, but particularly the opinion ones, just to get it firmly in our minds what we're going to do. Right, so let's think about this. Advantages. Well, of course, technology skills are big advantages. Let's start off with those because I think I'm going to argue for the sake of this. There's more to talk about for the disadvantages. And I like to put what you're going to argue in the second paragraph. I just think it sounds a bit more forceful and you're really pushing your point then a bit more. The reader is left with your opinion rather than the other way around, which I think is quite nice. So let's start off with the advantages. Of course, technology is incredible. We've got things like programming and, many skills. We'll talk about, these are just our notes, so we can talk about programming. And of course, this leads to perhaps more career options. It opens doors, benefits them in the future. Tech is a growing area, growing field. So yes, that's what we're going to focus on for the advantages. However, we're going to argue for the disadvantages here. So we want more points to show that that's what we're arguing. It's not, you're not answering the question properly if you have more points for the other view that you don't, in the essay, you don't agree with. That doesn't make sense to the reader. So we want to really bulk out this disadvantages section. Okay, disadvantages then. We are going to focus on the more kids are on computers and tablets, the less they are able to socialize, and this is going to impact them, their development, and we're going to talk about the effects of the lack of maybe social skills. We can link this in with maybe we can touch upon the pandemic as well, where everyone was on technology, and I think it affected a lot of people in a negative way. So this was almost like a social experiment that showed us that actually it's not, good for us as human beings. What else? Computers and tablets, now we're going to an additional point here, which we'll expand, can affect children's maybe focus and attention, their ability to focus for a long time. Just because they are on the computer and tablet doesn't mean that they are necessarily learning technology skills. They might be doing other things, tech skills, and that's a danger on. That's a danger for this road. For you're not always sure what kids are doing on computers. There's all kinds of things out there, so we'll touch upon that as well. Okay, so let's get into our write-up now. So we'll put all of our ideas together into a nicely structured essay here. So what's the first thing we need to do? I'm sure you know this by now. We need to paraphrase the first sentence here, put it into our own words. Okay, let's think about this. More and more parents are allowing their children to play on computers and tablets. there is an increasing or maybe increasingly parents are not restricting their young or their children is hard to paraphrase, their children's time on technology, as they want them to develop in this area. Maybe let's have a read back. Increasingly, parents are not restricting their children's time on technology as they want them to develop in this area. Okay, so now we're going to say what we're going to do in the essay. This essay will examine or focus on or examine both the benefits and drawbacks. We want to state that the drawbacks are more both the benefits and drawbacks, and argue that the disadvantages are more significant, perhaps. This essay will examine both the benefits and drawbacks and argue that the disadvantages are more significant. Okay then, so let's have a look at our first paragraph, and that was going to focus on the advantages. And this is all about how kids will learn things like programming, and we can talk about the recent developments of things like, I don't know, ChatGPT and technology that is expanding quicker than we can keep up. So of course we need children to be aware of this, and this will help them with their careers and things like this. Okay, so the primary appeal of the younger generation being aware of how to operate different types of computers, maybe. Is the fact they will learn invaluable skills in an ever-growing maybe arena. So technology is expanding. We'll develop this further, but just to start off with, we need our topic sentence. So they are learning valuable skills in an ever-growing area. Okay. Technology is incredibly broad. This could be this could encompass programming and coding, or they're the same thing. Let's think of a different idea. This could encompass programming and apps, maybe. Oh, they're quite similar as well. Maybe inventing or creating new models, or we could think of this could encompass programming and improving current models, or let's refigure this actually. This technology is incredibly broad, from programming to actually, let's say every aspect of life is affected by it. Therefore, children are able to learn skills that are essential for today's world. Today's world, such as, let's think of an example. Now we can use our programming and problem solving, perhaps. Not only is this critical for many careers now, but also this is an expanding area with developments. We can use ChatGPT, like ChatGPT, for example. The future is expansive and unknown for technology. And we need pioneers in this area. That's a good word. So we need people leading the knowledge and the focus of this. We need pioneers in this field. Okay, so we're talking about why children are, the advantages of them playing on computers and tablets, because there's technology affects every aspect. Children are learning skills that are essential. We could maybe put in that even if you are not thinking of going into a technology field, it is still useful regardless of whether children are interested in going into a career focused around technology developments. It is still vital for most jobs and schooling. We could say something like, let's link it back to the question. Being confident in this area is still vital for most jobs and schooling. Okay, let's have a read back. The primary appeal of the younger generation being aware of how to operate different types of computers is the fact they will learn invaluable skills in an ever-growing arena. Technology is incredibly broad. Every aspect of life is affected by it. Therefore, children are able to learn skills that are essential for today's world, such as programming and problem solving. Not only is this critical for many careers now, but also this is an expanding area. With developments like ChatGPT, for example, the future is expansive and unknown for technology. We could have a dramatic short sentence here. We need pioneers in this field. Regardless of whether children are interested in going into a career focused around technology developments, being confident in this area is still vital for most jobs and schooling. Okay, so now we're going to focus on our disadvantages, which we're of the opinion of that they outweigh the advantages. So let's link it to the advantages. We can say understanding technology is undoubtedly important. So we're not doubting it. However, the often overlooked drawbacks outweigh the possible advantages. We can use outweigh, or we can maybe we can use another word actually. Often overlooked drawbacks are considerably bigger than the advantages, than this advantage, for being specific. Okay, topic sentence. So we're setting ourselves up to go into our disadvantages now. Okay. So let's talk about, we're going to start with the social skills. That's our biggest argument here. And then we're going to lead into the focus and attention. But first, maybe we can just tackle this this argument that, oh, children will learn invaluable skills. Well, they can do that with maybe IT lessons at school. That should be sufficient for them to learn skills, but more time is not needed for to learn these skills. So firstly, children can learn new skills in school nowadays. For example, students are able to code. This inclusion in the education system means that parents do not need to allow their offspring more time on screens at home, perhaps. So we're just discrediting our argument here, the other side. Firstly, children can learn new skills in school nowadays. For example, students are able to code. This inclusion in the education system means that parents do not need to allow their offspring more time on screens at home. They will still learn the essentials. Okay, let's now go into our social skills argument. Another major drawback or downside is the fact that, we can use that as one word, compound word, is the fact that the more time children spend using gadgets, maybe instead of technology, the less time they are socializing. This will have a grave impact on every area of life, more so than a lack of technology or computer skills. So it's actually more important for them to have to be socializing than to have these computer skills. The pandemic, we can use that as an example, was a prime example of how too much screen time can negatively impact communication and people skills. as well as our well-being, perhaps we can say. Okay, so we've got our social skills debate. Now we can just link this in with the focus and attention. Furthermore, being surrounded by technology depletes children's ability to focus. Children's ability to focus and keep attention, negatively impacting their academia and life outside of school. Okay, I think we've got a lot in here. We've packed it quite big, this paragraph, but that's okay because this is what we're arguing. So we want to show the examiner that actually there are many more points for this than the other side. Let's have a read back. Understanding technology is undoubtedly important. However, the often overlooked drawbacks are considerably bigger than this advantage. Firstly, children can learn new skills in school nowadays. For example, students are able to code. This inclusion in the education system means that parents do not need to allow their offspring more time on screens at home. They will still learn the essentials. Maybe that's unnecessary. We can remove that one. Another major downside is the fact, have I used the fact? Maybe not. We're just checking for repetition here. That the more time children spend using gadgets, the less time they are socializing. This will have a grave impact on every area of life, more so than a lack of computer skills. The pandemic was a prime example of how too much screen time can negatively impact communication and people skills, as well as our well-being. Furthermore, being surrounded by technology depletes children's ability to focus and keep attention, negatively impacting, have we a grave impact, negatively their academic and maybe being surrounded by technology depletes children's ability to focus and keep attention, inevitably affecting every area of life. It is clear for these reasons there are many negative aspects. Okay, let's just tie this all together then. Overall, even though technology is extremely prevalent and important, and therefore skills are needed, and therefore children need certain skills in this area. It is undeniable that the negative impacts, such as lack of social skills, we can use the word from the question here, outweigh the benefits. Okay then, so we're looking for a minimum of 250 words. Let's have a look. Okay, so this comes to about 343. So this is a longer essay, but of course you can see how you could make the advantages a bit smaller if you wanted to balance this out, or yes, and maybe take away one of the points for the disadvantages if you think that you need less words. But you can see how you can structure this, and then hopefully if you're following along, that makes sense to you and you can do your own examples and things like that. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of today. Thank you so much for coming along, and I hope that was useful for you and your practice. And let us know if you have any questions, as always, and we'll see you next time.